Get out. I'm not going anywhere. The words left Naomi Brooks' lips before she even realized she'd spoken them. They came out sharp, precise, and low enough to slice through the sterile silence of the 47th floor hallway. Her heels clicked in rhythm as she moved. Click, click, click. The kind of measured sound that made people turn their heads even when they didn't know why. The polished floor of Brooks Dynamics Tower gleamed beneath her stride, mirroring the silhouette of a woman who had fought too hard to be mistaken for anything less than authority. The morning light poured in from the floor-to-ceiling windows, cutting ribbons of gold across her navy suit, perfectly tailored, pressed with care, the quiet language of power. This building had once just been a dream. Now it was hers. Naomi paused at the boardroom door, straightened her jacket, and drew a breath so controlled it could have calmed a storm. She had a board meeting scheduled with Crosswell Ventures, one of the largest venture capital firms in North America, a partnership that could catapult Brooks Dynamics into global expansion. Millions of dollars, contracts, and reputations were on the line. She had built her empire from a second-hand laptop. Today, she would prove she could scale it to the world. But before she could push the glass door open, the smallest moment reminded her she wasn't just another executive. She was a Black woman in a space still learning what that meant. The security guard stationed nearby gave her a long, puzzled look before scanning her badge. "Ma'am, this level is for executives only," he said politely, but the undertone was there, the quiet doubt, the unspoken question. Naomi offered a patient smile, though her stomach tightened. "And that's exactly where I belong." He blinked, embarrassed, then nodded. "Of course, Ms. Brooks. My apologies." She stepped past him without another word. She had learned long ago that confrontation wasn't always necessary. Sometimes silence cut deeper. Inside, the boardroom exuded wealth, minimalist design, obsidian tables stretching the length of the room, leather chairs that still smelled new. The skyline glittered through the panoramic windows behind it, San Francisco alive beneath the pale haze. Several people were already seated, chatting in small clusters. Executives from Crosswell Ventures, Brooks Dynamics division heads, and a few representatives from partner firms. Everyone wore confidence like armor. And at the far end of the room, with her manicured hands resting casually on a folder, stood Victoria Hale. Victoria was all angles, tall, blonde, precise, a woman who radiated corporate grace and the faint arrogance of those who never had to fight to be believed. Her cream blazer gleamed under the recessed lights, her voice floated smoothly as she laughed with a colleague, unaware that every move, every word was about to live forever in the wrong kind of memory. Naomi entered quietly, her gaze sweeping the room. She didn't announce herself. She didn't have to. This was her company. She had built it from code and chaos and caffeine, yet the air shifted the moment she stepped in. The chatter slowed, heads turned, a few brows furrowed. A man in a dark gray suit leaned toward another, whispering, "Is she with PR?" The other chuckled under his breath, "Maybe facilities." Naomi ignored it, placing her leather folder near her usual seat, the head. She was about to sit when Victoria turned. "Excuse me, ma'am. We're about to start. You can wait outside until the CEO arrives." The world stilled for a heartbeat. Naomi blinked. Once, twice. "I'm sorry. We're waiting for the CEO," Victoria repeated, still smiling. Naomi's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out at first. The disbelief was so absurd, It almost felt staged. Around the table, a few muffled cuckles rippled. Someone raised their phone, pretending to check an email, lens discreetly facing forward. "I am the CEO," Naomi said finally, her tone calm but carrying a quiet weight that filled the space. For a second, confusion flitted across Victoria's face. Then came the laugh, polite, incredulous, sharp around the edges. "Oh, no, we're expecting Naomi Brooks." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "That's me." The silence that followed was so complete it rang in her ears. Then the laughter began again, louder now from the man at the far end of the room who leaned back and muttered, "You've got to be kidding." Another executive smirked. "Unbelievable." Naomi stood there, heart steady, jaw firm. She'd felt this before, at conferences where people assumed she was the assistant, at investor meetings where she was asked whose startup she represented. But here? In her boardroom? That was new. Victoria's tone softened but didn't change direction. "Miss, sorry, ma'am. This meeting is for executives only. We'll just need you to—" Naomi's voice cut through her sentence like the edge of a blade. "Tell me, Miss Hale, what exactly about me made you assume I couldn't be the CEO?" Gasps fluttered around the room. Someone coughed. Victoria faltered, color draining slightly from her cheeks. "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. Well, I assumed you were staff, or maybe PR." "Staff," Naomi repeated quietly, rolling the word like glass between her fingers. "Not founder, not leader, just staff." She took one deliberate step forward. The sound of her heel hitting the marble was louder than the whispers. "You looked at me and made that judgment. Not because of my resume, not because of what I've achieved, but because I didn't fit the picture in your head." Victoria opened her mouth, but Naomi lifted a hand. "Don't bother," she said softly. "I've heard it all before." Her pulse was a drum under her ribs. Every eye in the room clung to her. Some ashamed, others curious, others afraid of being next. Naomi moved around the table, unhurried, every stride measured. She stopped at the head seat, the one Victoria had unconsciously stood in front of, and set her tablet on the table. Without looking up, she tapped the screen. The 100-inch display on the wall behind her flickered alive, the Brooks Dynamics logo blooming in sharp blue light. Gasps again. Someone swore under their breath. Naomi looked up, meeting their stares head-on. "I built this company," she said, voice steady, "from the ground up. Every patent, every contract, every breakthrough you're here to discuss exists because I refused to quit when doors like yours slammed shut in my face." Her gaze swept across the room. "And today, I walked into my own boardroom and was told to wait outside. That isn't a misunderstanding. That's arrogance wrapped in ignorance." No one moved. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Naomi pressed another button. Cameras blinked to life in the corners of the room, a security system she had personally ordered installed for transparency during negotiations. "You may as well keep recording," she said coolly, glancing at the man still clutching his phone. "Apparently, that's what everyone's doing today." A murmur of discomfort passed through the group. Victoria's voice wavered. "Ms. Brooks, please, let's not escalate this." "Escalate?" Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You humiliated me in front of my own executives. You turned prejudice into spectacle, and you think accountability is escalation?" She leaned forward, palms on the table.
Her reflection glimmered on the glass surface like a second self, calm, deadly, composed. "Do you know what's worse than racism in business?" she asked quietly. Victoria didn't answer. Couldn't. Naomi's voice dropped lower. "Pretending it doesn't exist." A cold stillness settled over the room. Every executive who had laughed now stared at the table, faces blank with shame. Naomi straightened, eyes never leaving Victoria. "Every one of you who dismissed me today, consider this your last meeting at Brooks Dynamics." The words detonated like thunder, gasps, stifled protests. "Wait, please," one of the men began, rising halfway from his chair. Naomi lifted a hand. "No, you don't get to apologize when the cameras are already rolling. You don't get to rewrite this moment because it's uncomfortable now." She turned slightly toward the doorway. "Security!" Two uniformed guards appeared. "Escort them out," Naomi said simply. Victoria's composure shattered. "Naomi, please, this isn't necessary." Naomi's tone never wavered. "You're right. It's overdue." The guards moved efficiently. Chairs scraped, voices pleaded, phones shook. Someone whispered, "Is this really happening?" as the humiliated three were led from the room. The entire thing was captured from every angle, the irony poetic, the same cameras they had mocked her with, now documenting their downfall. When the door clicked shut, silence reigned again. Naomi sat at the head of the table, finally, rightfully, and folded her hands. Her reflection in the glossy surface looked back at her, serene, immovable. "Now," she said, her voice smooth as marble, "shall we begin the real meeting?" No one dared look away. Outside, the city glowed beneath the rising sun, and in that moment, amid power, prejudice, and proof, Naomi Brooks reclaimed her throne.
The sound of the closing door lingered in the air, like a punctuation mark no one wanted to read aloud. For a moment, no one dared to move. The quiet was thick, not awkward, but heavy with the realization of what had just happened. Naomi Brooks sat at the head of the table, pen poised above her notepad, every line of her posture composed. Her eyes swept across the faces of those still seated, the ones who had watched, frozen as she took back control of her own house. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was calm, measured, stripped of anger, but not of power. "Let's begin." Her assistant, a young woman named Grace, cleared her throat gently and started projecting the next slide on the screen, a detailed forecast of Brooks Dynamics' AI healthcare software rollout. The numbers appeared, graphs rising like city skylines. Naomi explained each figure with precision, her voice steady, unshaken. It was as though the chaos of the last 10 minutes had never happened. That was Naomi's gift. Composure under fire. She could be burning inside, and no one would see the smoke. Still, she could feel the weight of their stares, not all malicious now, but heavy with guilt, admiration, or both. They watched her differently. Respect replaced the doubt. Some scribbled notes quickly, desperate to appear focused. As she clicked through the presentation, her mind drifted for just a second. Not away from the numbers, but back in time. Back to when Brooks Dynamics didn't even exist. Flashback, 10 years earlier. A cramped apartment, one bedroom, second-hand furniture, a laptop so old it wheezed like it had asthma. Naomi sat cross-legged on the floor, hoodie pulled over her head, the faint hum of the refrigerator her only company. She'd just quit her job at a medical data firm after being told yet again that she wasn't executive material. The phrase haunted her. It didn't mean she wasn't capable. It meant she didn't fit their mold. Her savings were down to $417. Her landlord had left a note on her door that morning. Second warning. But on that same night, a small notification pinged on her laptop screen. Model trained successfully. Naomi exhaled shakily. The algorithm she'd been coding for months had finally worked. A diagnostic AI capable of predicting early symptoms of heart disease from minor health metrics. It wasn't perfect, but it was revolutionary. She had no investors, no mentors, and no team. Just an idea and a belief that she could build something that mattered. When she'd tried pitching it to venture capital firms, the rejection was swift and polite. "You're talented, Naomi, but our portfolio already has a similar project." "Impressive concept, but you'll need a stronger co-founder, someone more experienced." And her favorite, "You have great energy. Maybe focus on the marketing side instead." She remembered walking out of those offices, her heels clicking across lobby floors that smelled like success she wasn't allowed to touch. But she never stopped. Nights turned into years, failures into breakthroughs. Her code improved, her resolve hardened. Eventually, one investor, a young, sharp woman named Lydia Grant, took a chance on her. "You're building something that will change medicine," Lydia had said. "I don't care what you look like. I care that you don't give up." Brooks Dynamics was born 6 months later. Back to present. Naomi's voice steadied as she continued. "We project a 28% increase in adoption once the integration with the International Health Network is complete." Her audience nodded, scribbling notes furiously. The same executives who had laughed minutes ago now couldn't meet her eyes for more than a heartbeat. Grace advanced to the final slide, Global Partnership Projections. Naomi leaned forward slightly. "If there are no further objections," she said smoothly, "we'll move to signing the Memorandum of Understanding." No one objected. No one even breathed too loudly. The documents slid across the table, pens gliding silently as names were signed. The deal was done. Naomi thanked everyone, closed her folder, and stood. "This meeting," she said quietly, "is adjourned." When she stepped out into the hallway, the cool blast of air conditioning hit her face like relief. The tension in her chest finally loosened, though her heart still drummed with adrenaline. Grace hurried up beside her, eyes wide. "Ma'am, that was necessary," Naomi interrupted softly. "It was necessary." They stopped at the glass wall overlooking the city. From this height, San Francisco looked like a circuit board, endless lights, moving pieces, quiet systems of power. Naomi stared down at it, her reflection floating ghost-like in the glass. She wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Tired of always needing to prove she belonged in rooms she built herself. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at the screen, a notification from X, formerly Twitter. "Naomi Brooks shuts down racist execs in viral boardroom video. This is your last meeting." Her stomach dropped. "Oh no," she murmured. She tapped it open. There it was. The entire confrontation, recorded from 3 angles, posted by someone in the room. The caption read, "She told them to wait outside her own boardroom." The video had been up for 20 minutes. It already had over 300,000 views. Grace peeked at her screen. "It's everywhere," she whispered. "TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. Everyone's reposting it." Naomi's throat tightened. They recorded everything. Grace hesitated. "Ma'am, you came out of it looking incredible. People are calling you a hero." Naomi sighed, rubbing her temple. Or an angry black woman, depending on who's watching.
She turned away from the window. Cameras had always fascinated her, how they could turn truth into entertainment. She hadn't meant to go viral, but then again, maybe this moment was never just about her. Later that evening, her penthouse apartment was dark except for the city lights bleeding through the curtains. Naomi sat on the sofa, laptop open, scrolling through comments. This woman just made corporate history. That's how you handle disrespect, with class. If this doesn't inspire you, nothing will. I bet those executives are deleting their LinkedIns right now. And then, inevitably, overreaction. She embarrassed professionals for a misunderstanding. She only got there because of diversity quotas. Naomi's fingers hovered over the trackpad. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. For every hateful remark, there were thousands defending her. Strangers who saw themselves in her silence before she spoke. A notification pinged from her PR manager. From Samantha Green. Subject: crisis or opportunity? Depends on how we spin it. Naomi exhaled slowly and typed back, "It's not a spin. It's a truth. Let it stand." She closed the laptop and sank back against the couch. For the first time in hours, she let her guard down. The adrenaline ebbed away, leaving a hollow ache behind her ribs, the price of holding power under scrutiny. She looked around her living room, framed patents on the wall, the first prototype of her AI chip displayed in glass, photos of her parents smiling proudly beside her first office space, a rented garage in Oakland. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Baby girl, if they don't open the door, build your own damn building." She smiled faintly. "Guess I did, Daddy." But tonight, even her victory felt complicated. Power always came with isolation. She knew tomorrow morning she'd wake up to hundreds of interview requests, invitations, and think pieces dissecting every breath she took. She wasn't just Naomi Brooks anymore. She was a symbol, and symbols rarely got to rest.
The next morning. By sunrise, the clip had crossed 10 million views. News anchors called it the boardroom revolution. Think pieces flooded LinkedIn. Hashtags trended. Hashtag she owns the boardroom. Hashtag Naomi Brooks moment. Hashtag representation matters. Brooks' dynamic stock climbed 5% overnight. Emails poured in from universities asking her to speak. Civil rights groups quoted her lines. She had become a movement without meaning to. But Naomi wasn't celebrating. She stood in her office window, coffee untouched, staring at the city below. When Grace entered, holding a tablet filled with press requests, Naomi only asked, "Has anyone reached out from Crosswell Ventures?" "Yes, ma'am," Grace said carefully. "They've issued an apology statement, a public one. They're also requesting a follow-up meeting." Naomi let out a quiet laugh. "Of course they are." Grace hesitated. "Do you want me to decline?" Naomi turned toward her assistant, a wry smile forming. "No, schedule it. Let them see that the woman they told to wait outside now decides who comes in." Grace grinned. "Yes, ma'am." As the door closed behind her, Naomi looked back out at the skyline, alive, electric, full of stories like hers. She didn't want revenge, she wanted recognition, not for herself, but for every woman who had ever been mistaken for someone's assistant when she was actually the boss. She picked up her phone and opened X. She hesitated for a moment, then typed, "They told me to wait outside my own boardroom. I chose to walk in. Don't wait for permission to own what you built. Hashtag Naomi Brooks. Hashtag leadership." She hit post. Within seconds, notifications exploded again. Likes, retweets, comments flooding in. Naomi smiled faintly. This time, she didn't flinch. This time, she stood exactly where she was meant to be. By mid-morning, Brooks Dynamics thrummed like a server farm at full capacity. Phones rang, legal counsels murmured in glass-walled huddles, and the media monitoring screen in the communications bay scrolled headlines so fast it looked like rainfall. Everyone pretended to be cool, but the whole building buzzed, the way a city does just before a storm breaks. Naomi closed her office door and let the quiet settle. She eased into the chair, pressed her palms together, and inhaled. Hold. Release. She had built this ritual for herself in the earliest days when funding was a rumor and failure felt like a roommate. Even now, with the world watching, she needed it more than ever. Her phone vibrated twice, then a third time. She glanced down. Mom. Hi, baby. Call when you can. Your father won't stop pacing. Dad. You walk in any room you want, you hear me? Unknown. Miss Brooks, I'm a junior associate at Crosswell. I'm sorry for what happened. Thank you for what you did. It mattered. Naomi stared at the last message. She didn't know the sender, but she could see her, a woman at her first real job, learning how to keep her head above other people's oceans. She typed a short reply. Thank you. Keep your head up and your receipts. She hit send, then called her parents. Hey, baby, her mother answered on the first ring. She could hear a kettle hiss and the familiar chime of the kitchen clock behind her. We saw the clip. Half my school sent it to me. You had the whole lunchroom hollering. And your father rewound it 7 times, her dad added, voice booming as he grabbed the phone. 7! Naomi laughed despite herself. Daddy. I liked the part where you said, escort them out, he continued, delighted. Your mama said I was clapping too loud. Her mother tusked. I did not say that. I said you startled the dog. Naomi closed her eyes and let their voices wash over her. The kitchen sounds, the humor, the soft clatter of the world that raised her. It wasn't how I wanted it to happen. It became a spectacle. Her mother's voice softened. Spectacles only feel like spectacles when your spirit is tired. You told the truth, and sometimes the truth has an audience. Her father added, more gently, you didn't embarrass anybody, baby. They embarrassed themselves. You just turned on the light. Naomi swallowed. I know. It's just, now it's not just about me. It's a symbol, and symbols get pulled apart. Her mother paused. Then you decide what the symbol means. Otherwise, other people will. Come by for dinner this weekend. I'm making peach cobbler. Naomi smiled. You just want to stare at me like I'm the evening news. We want to feed our baby. Your mom is right. Let the symbol be generosity, not vengeance. When the call ended, Naomi lingered in the quiet. She thought about their house in Atlanta, the magnolia tree outside the kitchen window, the smell of ink that clung to her father's blue postal uniform, and the chalk dust on her mother's sleeves when she came home from teaching. Those 2 lives had taught her a strange math, how to carry more than she was given. She opened the bottom drawer of her desk and pulled out a plain, scuffed thumb drive. The past fit in the palm of her hand. 5 years earlier, the first betrayal. The Tech Accelerator's demo day glittered with venture capital smiles. Naomi stood on a red dot, 10 minutes from either a runway or a cliff, presenting a vision most people only saw as a slide deck. Her model predicted early heart failure risk with 10% more accuracy than industry benchmarks. Not perfect, never that, but better, faster, smarter. The kind of improvement that means someone's mother lives long enough to see another graduation.
Backstage, a mentor named Evan Whitaker clapped too hard and told her she was tight, by which he meant brilliant and contained, a compliment that felt like a box. He'd helped her polish her pitch, cleaned up her cap table, and introduced her to two investors who shook her hand like it was a doorbell. After the applause, one of those investors asked for the code. "Just for diligence," he said smoothly. Naomi hesitated. Her gut said no. Her debt said maybe. Evan put a fatherly hand on her shoulder and said, "It's standard." She didn't sleep for 2 days. When she finally did, it was for 3 hours on a stranger's couch, and she woke up with a stress headache that felt like an anvil. She sent a partial repository, watermarked, obfuscated just enough to be useless without her insight. She told herself she was paranoid. And still, the next week, the investor passed, with a curiously familiar product already in exploratory development at one of his portfolio companies.
Naomi called Evan. He didn't answer. She called again. When he finally picked up, he sounded bored. "Welcome to the majors," he said. "Don't cry about the weather. Pack a coat." She hung up before she could do something that wouldn't help, like scream. Then she did the only thing she knew how to do. She wrote code, emails, a promise to herself. She documented everything, filed provisional patents, and locked the core architecture where only 3 people could access it: her first engineer, and the lawyer who believed her. 2 months later, she got an email from a young dev at that portfolio company. "I think we're using your idea. I am uncomfortable with this." Attached were timestamps, commit messages, and Slack screenshots, enough to build a bridge between suspicion and proof. Naomi's lawyer moved like a storm. The company settled. Evan made himself scarce. The investor retired 6 months later. Naomi learned 2 things. First, you don't lose a war you refuse to stop fighting. Second, the people who tell you the world is a meritocracy are often the ones cheating at the game. Back in the present, she brushed a thumb over the old drive and slipped it back into the drawer. Not as a wound, as a relic. Not everything deserved to live on a screen. A knock at the door. "Come in." Lydia Grant stepped inside. Crisp navy suit, braided hair pulled low, a smile that read warmth and triage. The first investor who'd believed Naomi without asking to borrow her soul. "I brought muffins and legal disclaimers," she said, placing a bakery box on the credenza and a folder on the desk. "We can weaponize either as needed." Naomi exhaled a laugh. "Thank you, for both." Lydia took a seat, crossed her legs, and studied her friend. "How are you? And don't say fine, or I'll take the muffins back." Naomi leaned back. "I'm intact, tired. The attention feels like a debt I didn't agree to." "Attention is always a credit card," Lydia said dryly. "High limit, high interest." They shared a smile that had weathered too many meetings with people who called themselves allies only when cameras were around. Lydia nodded toward the window where the city churned through traffic and errands and the thousand small decisions that make an ordinary day. Somewhere, out there, a young woman sat at a desk trying to seem smaller than her competence. Somewhere else, a boardroom door was closing on someone who deserved to be inside it. Naomi's phone vibrated again, this time with a calendar alert. Mentor Roundtable, 30 minutes. Every month, Naomi hosted a private Zoom for 20 women and non-binary founders. No sponsors, no panels. Just a place to say the quiet parts out loud and fix them together. She'd been a guest in too many rooms built on performance. She decided to build one on candor. She dialed in a few minutes early. Faces flickered on one by one: a retail tech founder in Detroit, a robotics PhD in Houston, a medtech COO in Oakland, 2 sisters running a logistics startup in Nairobi. The chat bloomed with greetings, emojis, and jokes about caffeine. "You made the news, Naomi," someone said with a grin.
Do we bow or do we invoice? Naomi smiled. Invoice. Always invoice. The laughter loosened the group, like it always did. They spent 20 minutes on product market fit and 16 on a thorny co-founder issue that had curdled into quiet warfare. Then someone cleared her throat and asked, "Can we talk about the clip?" Naomi's face softened. "We can. Did you plan it? The cameras, the line, the moment?" "No. I planned to show up and do my job. The line showed up because a boundary did." A founder on the East Coast, voice tight, said, "I'm scared of going viral for the wrong reason. I'm scared of becoming the story instead of what I'm building." Naomi nodded. "Here's what I know. If a moment comes for you, let it tell the truth about your work, not just your anger. If you can, anchor it to a policy, a product, a practice. Otherwise, they'll call it a tantrum when it was a thesis." Silence, the good kind, settled. Someone typed, "Thesis greater than tantrum," in the chat. Hearts pinged beside it. Before they signed off, Naomi added, "One last thing. Document everything not because you want to sue someone, but because memory is a poor witness. Protect your time, your code, your name. And don't confuse access with approval. Rooms will let you in and still hope you fail." They waved goodbye. The grid of faces disappeared, replaced by her own reflection again, smaller now that the screen had gone dark. Grace slipped in with a folder. "First draft of the BES initiative," she said, almost reverent, as if handing over a newborn. "Also, Crosswell confirmed. Their CEO, Richard Klein, will be here tomorrow at 9. Naomi took the folder, heartbeat ticking up a notch. "Good. Prep a brief, our terms, non-negotiables, and a timeline. Also, get facilities to remove the name cards in the boardroom. Nobody saves a seat that isn't earned."
Grace grinned. Petty and principled, my favorite combo. She sobered. "You know there'll be backlash, right? People who'll say you're cashing in on a moment?" Naomi opened the folder. "People pretend integrity is free. It isn't. It costs attention you didn't ask for and grace you haven't been given. We'll pay it in systems." Grace let out a breath. "I'm proud to work here." "Me too," Naomi said, and meant it. When Grace left, Naomi skimmed the BES draft. Definitions, enforcement, reporting cadence, a clause about retaliation that made her chest unclench. She made a few notes in the margins: independent ombud, anonymous hotline, board-level oversight, then set the pen down. The building hummed around her, circuits within circuits. Her mind drifted, as it sometimes did, to that science fair in 7th grade, the one where the judge glanced at the black girl with a heart rate sensor made from scavenged parts and said, "Cute." She wanted to disappear. Her mother had taken her hand afterward and walked her to the car in silence. In the front seat, her mother turned and said, "It is not your job to shrink to fit someone else's eyesight." Naomi had carried those words into every room since, though sometimes they felt heavier than the rooms could hold. Her screen brightened with a new email. Subject: Speaking invitation, National Forum on Health Equity. She skimmed. They wanted her to keynote, to tell the story, to ignite the conversation. She closed the window. There would be time for microphones. Right now, she wanted meetings. Her desk phone lit up. Line 2, Victoria Hale. Naomi stared at the blinking light for a beat and picked up. "Naomi Brooks." Victoria's voice was controlled, sanded down to politeness. "Miss Brooks, thank you for taking my call." Naomi said nothing. "I'm calling to apologize, publicly, of course, but first, directly. I was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to listen and to repair what I damaged." Naomi let the quiet stretch. "What made you assume I wasn't the CEO?" she asked finally. "Not the PR answer, the real one." A breath. "Because I didn't match my picture. Because I didn't think to update the picture. Because my career has rewarded me for being certain even when I was careless. A pause. Because bias is a habit I've never had to break. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment. Honesty didn't erase harm, but it did lower the temperature. Tomorrow at 9, your CEO will sit in my boardroom. We will discuss our partnership. Included will be the boardroom equity standards. If Croswell signs, not a press release, a contract, then we can talk about repair. I'll be there, Victoria said softly. And I'll sign what I'm allowed to sign. Don't sign what you're allowed. Sign what's right. When the line clicked dead, Naomi cased the handset back in the cradle and looked at the BES draft again. The clip had turned her into a headline. The work would decide whether she became a footnote or a chapter. She stood, gathered the folder, and headed for the door. In the reflection of the dark screen on her wall, she caught a glimpse of herself. The same girl from the science fair, the same woman from the boardroom, the same spine built from her mother's sentences and her father's routes. The world would keep telling stories about her. Let them. She would keep building systems around the stories, scaffolding that outlasted the news cycle. In the hallway, an intern stepped back to let her pass, eyes wide, hands full of printouts. Naomi paused. What's your name? Joy Okofo. Joy. Beautiful name. If you ever find yourself waiting outside a room you belong in, email me. I'll open the door from the inside. Joy blinked, startled, then smiled so fast it looked like relief. Yes, ma'am. Naomi moved on, the city stretching beyond the glass, the future already crowding the elevator. Tomorrow, a CEO would walk into her boardroom. Tomorrow, a policy would meet the world it needed it. And tomorrow, the symbol other people tried to own would belong again to the woman who built it. Not because of a clip, but because of a standard. She pressed the elevator button, the light blooming under her fingerprint. The doors slid open. She stepped in. The building's bones thrummed. Her heart answered back. Downstairs, the lobby doors faced the street. Outside, a little boy tugged his mother's hand and pointed up at the glass tower. Mama, he said, eyes wide. Who lives there? Naomi caught the mother's smile as they passed. A woman who built it. Keep walking. You've got somewhere to be. The elevator doors closed on the city, not as an ending, but as a breath pulled before the next line. Morning light poured through the 47th floor windows like liquid gold, streaking across the conference table where the final confrontation was about to unfold. The boardroom had been cleaned, polished, and reset overnight, but it carried a different kind of weight now. This was no longer just the room Naomi Brooks had been told to wait outside. It was the place where she would rewrite how business was done. Grace moved around briskly, setting bottled water and tablets before each chair. She adjusted the company flag near the screen and looked at Naomi, who stood by the window with her arms crossed, studying the skyline. Croswell's car just pulled in, Grace said softly. Naomi didn't move. Good. Let's not keep them waiting. It's time they saw what respect looks like on schedule. Grace smiled faintly. You ready for this? Naomi turned, the corners of her mouth lifting. I've been ready for this since the day someone told me to stay in the lobby. She adjusted the cuff of her blazer, took a breath, and walked toward the door just as it opened. Richard Klein entered first, mid-50s, white hair slicked back, the kind of confidence that came from decades of being called sir by rooms full of people who wanted something from him. Behind him came two assistants, a PR representative, and Victoria Hale, who kept her gaze low but her posture straight. Miss Brooks, Richard said with a rehearsed smile, thank you for agreeing to meet with us and for allowing us to correct yesterday's events. Naomi gestured toward the table. Please, have a seat. The room was silent except for the soft rustle of suits and chair legs sliding across the floor. Richard placed his tablet in front of him and looked up.
Let me start by saying, on behalf of Croswell Ventures, what happened yesterday was unacceptable. We failed, both personally and institutionally. Ms. Hale has taken full accountability and— Naomi raised a hand. Stop there. Richard blinked. Excuse me? I don't need a performance of remorse, Naomi said calmly. You came here for business. Let's keep it that way. The PR rep shifted awkwardly. Victoria's fingers tightened around her pen. Naomi continued, We'll address the incident once. It happened. It revealed something about your company culture, not just one executive. If we move forward, that changes today. Richard leaned back slightly. We're prepared to make whatever gestures are necessary to repair our relationship. Gestures? Naomi's tone was ice. Mr. Klein, I don't want gestures. I want structure. Grace stepped forward and placed a slim folder in front of Naomi. She opened it and slid copies down the table to the Croswell delegation. Boardroom Equity Standards, BES for short. If Croswell wants a partnership with Brooks Dynamics, you signed this agreement. It's not symbolic, it's operational. Richard opened the folder. His brow furrowed as he read. Quarterly pay equity audits, mandatory anti-bias certification for leadership, independent oversight committee, transparent promotion metrics. He paused, looking up. You're asking to regulate us? I'm asking you to be accountable, Naomi said, the same way we are. This is extensive, he said slowly. You're talking about cost, bureaucracy? Naomi interrupted again, voice firm but controlled. I'm talking about integrity. Victoria looked up for the first time. Her face was pale, but her voice steady. Mr. Klein, she's right. We can afford this. What we can't afford is to be the company that refuses to learn. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he flipped through the document again, tapping his finger at a paragraph. Clause 4B, Public Release of Compliance Summaries. You expect us to publish this? Naomi nodded. Yes. You'll publish your progress quarterly. Sunlight doesn't kill good companies. Richard exhaled sharply. You know this could start a precedent. Others will expect the same from their partners. That's the point. Someone has to set one.
Silence spread like tension before a storm. Grace stood by the door, still and alert. The assistants exchanged uncertain glances. The PR rep whispered something into Richard's ear. He ignored it. Finally, he asked, And if we don't sign? Naomi met his gaze. Then Brooks Dynamics finds a partner who believes equity isn't negotiable. Richard studied her for a long moment. Behind the calm of his expression, gears turned, calculating risk, profit, reputation. Naomi could almost see it, the algorithms of power spinning in real time. He leaned forward. You're using leverage. I'm using clarity. He smiled faintly, though his eyes didn't. You know, Miss Brooks, I've dealt with a lot of founders who wanted to make statements. They burn bright, make noise, then realize the system doesn't bend easily. Naomi tilted her head. Then they weren't systems engineers. I am. That line landed like a coded command. And for the first time, Richard looked impressed. Victoria glanced sideways at Naomi. If I may, she said cautiously, I think what Miss Brooks is proposing will strengthen Croswell. Not just our image, our infrastructure. Richard didn't look at her. And you're prepared to enforce this? Naomi leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. No, you'll enforce it. I'll just make sure the world knows whether you did. There was another pause. Outside, clouds drifted past the glass,
their reflections gliding across the polished table. The city below carried on, oblivious, ordinary, endless. Finally, Richard sighed. "You're not leaving me much room to decline." "That's intentional," Naomi said. He nodded slowly, closed the folder, and set his pen on top. "Send it to legal. We'll review, but I'll tell you now, it's likely we'll sign." Grace smiled faintly. "We appreciate your cooperation." Richard stood. "And if we do this, Miss Brooks, I hope you understand, this will make you a very public figure. You'll be the face of corporate reform, whether you want it or not." Naomi rose too. "If that's the cost of doing the right thing, I'll pay it." Richard extended his hand. She took it, firm, professional, final. "Then consider this a new beginning," he said. Naomi nodded. "Let's hope so." As they turned to leave, Victoria lingered behind. She hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Miss Brooks, I meant what I said yesterday. I was wrong. Not just about you, about what leadership looks like. I'll spend the rest of my career proving I learned something from this." Naomi regarded her for a moment. "Good. Start with your team. Teach them to see people before positions." Victoria nodded, eyes glistening. "I will." When she left, the door clicked shut behind her. The air shifted, lighter but not easier. Grace walked up beside Naomi. "You think they'll actually sign?" "Yes. And not because they want to, because the world will make them." Grace smiled. "You're trending, again, by the way. #boardroomrevolution. Over 3 million posts." Naomi exhaled a small laugh. "Of course I am. Some say you're the next Rosa Parks of corporate America." Naomi's brow furrowed. "Don't compare me to legends. I'm just trying to make boardrooms less blind." Grace tilted her head. "That's what makes it legendary."
Later that day, the news broke at 2:14 p.m. Crosswell Ventures announces partnership renewal with Brooks Dynamics, signs historic boardroom equity standards agreement. Every network picked it up. CNBC, Bloomberg, The Guardian. The New York Times called it a first-of-its-kind corporate accountability framework spearheaded by one of tech's most powerful CEOs. Naomi didn't bask in it. She sat quietly in her office, watching the world talk. For once, the noise didn't make her heart race. It steadied it. The clip that had humiliated her was now paired with one that empowered millions. Her inbox overflowed again, messages from executives, activists, and strangers. But one stood out. Subject: from someone who needed to see it. "Ms. Brooks, I'm a first-year analyst. Yesterday, my boss told me to dress more like I belong here. I watched your clip. Today, I walked in with my head high. Thank you for giving me permission I didn't know I could take." Naomi leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. That, more than the headlines, more than the contracts, was the reason it mattered. Evening. The city outside glimmered under twilight. Naomi's reflection merged with the skyline, one silhouette among millions. She stood at her office window again, arms folded, the faint hum of servers beneath her feet. Behind her, Grace shut down the lights. "Heading home?" Grace asked. "In a minute." Grace nodded and lingered at the doorway. "You know, you didn't just win a deal. You rewrote a chapter." Naomi smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure it's not the last one." Grace nodded and left quietly. Naomi looked out once more at the city, alive, imperfect, beautiful. She thought of her parents in Atlanta, her father's voice echoing, "If they don't open the door, build your own damn building." She whispered to the glass, "I did, Daddy." And this time, For the first time in her career, she didn't feel like she was proving anything. She was leading.
2 weeks can rearrange a life. In 14 days, the clip transformed from a flare into a constellation. The Boardroom Equity Standards (BES) agreement with Croswell Ventures was signed, notarized, and posted. Not as a press release, but as a PDF with clauses, teeth, and timelines. 3 other firms asked for meetings. One tried to bargain the public reporting clause into a private dashboard. Naomi declined without blinking. If the sunlight makes you nervous, she told them, fix the room, not the window. The world kept talking. The hashtags thinned into stories. A reporter in Detroit profiled a plant manager who adopted a promotion rubric pulled straight from BES. A hospital in Phoenix emailed Brix Dynamics requesting a pilot for the diagnostic model and a consultation on the equity framework that produced the team building it. Naomi said yes to the first and referred the second to a coalition of operators who'd been doing equity work long before the world learned to applaud it. She did not become an activist, she became clearer. And clarity, she discovered, was a discipline. On a gray Thursday, the press conference arrived, not to celebrate a clip, but to announce a roadmap. Naomi rehearsed exactly once, not because she wanted polish, but because she wanted to make sure the sentences could hold her weight. Grace set 2 bottles of water on the podium. 15 minutes, she said, glancing at the run of show. Statement, then 5 questions. We screened the outlets, no bad faith actors. That doesn't mean they won't push. Naomi smoothed the corner of her note card. It was nearly blank. Tell the truth. Refuse the costume. She stepped onto the small stage. Cameras clicked like rain starting. The Brooks Dynamics logo glowed behind her, smaller than the moment, which was exactly how she wanted it. Good morning, she began, voice steady. 2 weeks ago, the world watched a boardroom failure, not only of manners, but of imagination. We all know that moment wasn't unique. The only unique thing was that you saw it. She let the room breathe. We signed the Boardroom Equity Standards with Croswell Ventures. The agreement is public, the reporting will be public. Any firm that partners with us will meet the standard, not because it makes for a nice headline, because it makes for a better company. A hand shot up. The moderator nodded. Naomi, a journalist from a national business outlet, said, critics argue BES adds bureaucracy and cost that could slow innovation. Your response? Innovation is already expensive. We've just been sending the bill to the people least able to pay it. BES reallocates the cost to the system that creates the friction. That's efficient. Another hand. Are you worried about being seen as an equity CEO rather than a tech CEO? She smiled small and unbothered. I'm an engineer. I fix things. Bias is a bug. Health is the product. If I can't hold 2 truths at once, I shouldn't be here. A freelancer on the aisle asked, do you forgive the executives you escorted out? I don't have a grudge to protect. I have a company to run. Accountability is not revenge, it's maintenance. Everyone looked up. Pen scratched. 2 camera operators exchanged a glance, like they'd caught a headline mid-sentence. The last question came from a local station. What do you say to the young person who watched that clip and felt less alone? Naomi's throat tightened. She saw her 7th grade science fair, the cardboard, the taped wires, the judge's bored smile, her mother's sentence like a lantern in a storm. She steadied. I'd say, don't wait for permission to own what you built. I'd say, document your work, protect your name, and choose your allies by their patterns, not their promises. And I'd say, when the door opens, hold it. Not for them, for the ones coming behind you. The room went still, not reverent, ready. When it ended, Naomi stepped off the stage and exhaled like she had set down a suitcase she had been carrying since the hallway outside her own boardroom. Grace beamed. Lydia gave a subtle thumbs up from the back row and slipped out to beat the traffic of microphones. That afternoon, Brooks Dynamics released version 3.2 of its diagnostic platform. No fanfare, just code, quietly excellent. The product team celebrated with pizza at their desks and a Slack thread of gifts. The world didn't notice. Naomi preferred it that way. Let the work stand on its own legs. The first audit. BES wasn't designed to be a press strategy. It was a calendar. The first quarterly checkpoint landed on a Monday. An external auditor,
A woman named Priya Shah with a resume like a spine presented Croswell's initial submission. Pay bands, promotion flow, grievance trends, a paragraph that read like confession. 4 senior leaders failed to complete bias certification by the deadline. 2 were removed from eligible decision-making until certification is complete. Richard Klein appeared on the video wall, jaw set, not defensive. "We missed targets," he said. "We corrected. We will correct faster next quarter." Naomi nodded. "Post the summary today. We'll post ours." They did. The comments were everything you'd expect. Applause, annoyance, accusations of performativity, requests for templates, and a quiet cadre of operators asking how to stand up their own version. Grace built a simple site, boardroomequity.org, an open-source repository of clauses, checklists, and caution notes. No branding, no names, just tools. "Won't you lose credit?" a comms consultant asked, baffled. "That's the point," Grace replied. "We're trying to lose credit and gain adoption." The consultant blinked like someone had turned the room on its side.
On a rain-polished Tuesday, Naomi's office door clicked open. Victoria stood there, invitation in the stiffness of her shoulders. "May I?" she asked. Naomi gestured to the chair. Victoria sat. The silence was not hostile. It was careful. "I stepped down from my role," Victoria said, not meeting Naomi's eyes. "Not because I was asked, because I need to do different work before I deserve to lead." Naomi studied her. There was no triumph to be had here, only choices. "What different work?" she asked. "Internal systems, real ones. I'm joining a firm that audits promotional pathways. I want to build the kind of boring truth people don't like to brag about." Naomi almost smiled. "Boring truth is how you fix things." Victoria nodded, relieved. She pulled a folder from her bag. "I wrote something for your BES repository, a guide for managers who don't know where to start. It's not pretty, but it's honest. I hesitate. I'll understand if you don't want my name on it. Put your name on it. Let the learning belong to you." Victoria's eyes shimmered. She nodded, stood, and paused at the door. "Thank you for not ending me." Naomi shook her head. "I don't know how to end people. I only know how to end patterns." When she left, Naomi sat for a long moment listening to the air vents whisper. The world would keep trying to crystallize the story into hero and villain, but people insisted on being more complicated than that. It was, she decided, the only reason change ever stuck. Joy O'Coffer, the intern who'd nearly dropped her papers the day Naomi promised to open doors, graduated to an analyst role by fall. She shipped her first product metrics report, too long by 11 pages and too earnest by a mile, and Naomi loved it for exactly those reasons. She called Joy into her office. "You tracked the right things," Naomi said, tapping the pages. "Now, track fewer of them. Pick the numbers that move the others." Joy nodded, scribbling. "Yes, ma'am." "And tomorrow, you're coming to the partner sync. You won't speak unless spoken to. You'll watch, and afterward, you'll tell me who made decisions and why." Joy's eyes widened. Yes, thank you." The next day, Joy sat at the edge of the boardroom like someone holding their breath. She watched the lean of bodies, the cadence of interruptions, the way a question landed differently depending on who asked it. Afterward, she gave Naomi a list, 8 names, 2 patterns, and 1 suggestion that made Naomi grin for its audacity. Make a seat at the table that rotates, 1 seat for whoever did the unglamorous work. They speak first on status. "Petty and principled," Naomi murmured, and wrote it down. The rotating seat became policy. Meetings got shorter by 12 minutes on average. The quietest engineers found their sentences landing earlier in the hour. Strangely, morale went up without any new snacks being purchased. The spreadsheet labeled "Joy Seat Impact" became a running joke in operations. Jokes, Naomi had learned, are often proof that something heavy has become normal enough to tease.
On a Saturday honeyed by southern sun, Naomi flew to Atlanta. No entourage, just a carry-on, and a heart that kept reaching backward. Her parents' house smelled like memory, cinnamon, floor cleaner, and conversation. Her mother opened the door before Naomi knocked. "There she is," she sang, pulling her daughter into the kitchen. "Wash your hands, the cobbler's cooling." Her father came around the corner in a Brooks Dynamics hoodie he'd definitely purchased, not been gifted. "Celebrity!" he boomed, then softened. "You look tired, baby." "I'm good," Naomi said, and meant it. "I'm sturdy." They ate like they always had, with the television on but the volume low, pausing to laugh, hands reaching across the table out of old habit. Her mother asked normal questions. "You sleeping? You eating? You talking to anybody that makes you smile?" And Naomi answered in normal ways, grateful for the ordinary. After dishes, her father took her to the garage. A folding table stood in the corner. On it, a plastic tub labeled Science Fair. He popped the lid with a flourish. "I found this last week," he said, eyes bright. "Your first heart rate sensor. I was going to surprise you at Christmas, but I'm impatient." Naomi lifted the bent breadboard. Wires dangled like memory lanes. The cardboard sign, Pulse Project, had faded into the color of antique things. "I remember him," she whispered, and both of them laughed at her pronoun. Her father leaned on the workbench. "I know what I remember. That judge calling it cute." His smile thinned. "I wanted to go to jail that day." Naomi chuckled wetly. "Mama wouldn't have bailed you out." "She would have, but she would have called me stupid the whole drive home." They stood there for a while, quiet and aligned. The garage held things that mattered and things that didn't, and it was sometimes hard to tell which was which until you grew older. Back in the kitchen, her mother wrapped cobbler in foil and pointed a wooden spoon at Naomi's chest. "Listen to me. A symbol pulls and pulls and pulls. Don't let it turn you into a knot. Come home when the string gets tight." "I will," Naomi said. Her mother softened. "You always do."
Crosswell's second quarterly report landed cleaner than the first. Two firms that had balked at BES returned with signatures. A healthcare consortium asked if they could adopt a modified version. The inbox filled with "We're trying," and its cousin, "We're pretending." Naomi learned to hear the difference. One evening, an email arrived from a university dean. "We are launching a fellowship for underrepresented operators. Will you lend your name?" Naomi stared at the screen. Names were ladders, but names were also billboards. She replied with terms that made the ladder more likely than the billboard. The dean agreed. The fellowship launched with no gala, just a cohort and a curriculum. The first class sent Naomi a group photo from a classroom that looked like ambition in human form. She printed it and pinned it to the corkboard behind her desk. There was one more camera moment, not staged, not avoidable. A business magazine insisted on a cover story, and Naomi relented on the condition that the photo shoot happen in the lab, not the boardroom. They took the pictures, Naomi in safety goggles, laughing with an engineer, peering into a microscope that had been turned off for the shot. Fine. The world liked symbols. She could accommodate without surrendering. As they were leaving, the photographer, a woman with kind eyes and a wrist tattoo of a fern, asked, "One more. Just you, at the window." Naomi stood where she'd stood the day she'd told the security guard she belonged. The day she'd said, "Escort them out." The day she turned a clause into a contract. The photographer lifted the camera, then lowered it. "Can I ask what you're thinking?" she said softly. "That the window is clean, but the room is cleaner. The photographer smiled. Hold that. The shutter clicked. The picture ran on the cover without a crown, without a throne. Just a woman and a window, and the city she refused to watch through glass.
Time did what time does. The clip shifted from trending to reference. The standards moved from novelty to baseline. Some companies adopted them happily, some reluctantly. A few loudly turned their backs and found themselves explaining, again and again, why their rooms still looked the way they did. The market made certain arguments tedious. In the hum of ordinary days, Brooks Dynamics kept shipping. The model improved by 2 percentage points. A trial in Lagos found success in a clinic that had learned to do more with less. Joy got promoted and negotiated like she'd been born at a bargaining table. Grace took a vacation for the first time in 3 years and texted photos of a coastline that looked like a secret. Lydia laughed louder, then softer, and then announced she was starting a fund that wrote the first check to the builder everyone else treated like a second thought. Naomi slept. Not always enough, always better than before. On an evening that smelled faintly like rain, Naomi stayed late. The tower went quiet in that comforting way buildings do when they trust the person still inside them. She walked the halls, nodded at the cleaning crew, thanked the security guard without making eye contact linger longer than was kind. She ended at the boardroom. It was empty. The glass reflected the city like a second world. She stepped to the head of the table and rested her fingertips on the cool surface. Now, she said to no one, to everyone, shall we begin the real meeting? It was a joke. It was a prayer. It was a line from a day when the world insisted on becoming an audience. It was also a reminder that the meeting was never the point. The work was. Her phone buzzed. A group chat, Founders Roundtable. Someone had posted a meme about procurement contracts. It was ridiculous and perfect. Naomi laughed, the sound small and full. She took one last look at the room. It was only a room. The power was in the people who decided what it was for. In the elevator down, she thought of 1,000 versions of herself. The girl at the science fair, the woman on the red dot, the CEO at the window, the stranger in someone else's camera. All of them were real. None of them were complete. The doors opened to the lobby. A little girl in a school uniform stared up at the high ceiling like it might open. Her mother took her hand and the girl tugged back, pointing at the building directory. "Who works here?" she asked. Her mother glanced at Naomi and smiled. "Builders." Naomi stepped into the evening, the city soft and complicated and hers. Somewhere in a room, a rule was changing. Somewhere else, a door was opening because someone refused to wait outside of it. She didn't need to see each one. It was enough to know the hinge had a better set of screws. At the curb, her car pulled up. She got in, leaned back, and watched the tower recede. Tomorrow would be emails and audits and code reviews, and maybe cobbler if she left early enough to catch a flight. The headline would fade. The standard would stay. The symbol would bend to the system it birthed. Naomi closed her eyes and let the quiet fill the space where adrenaline used to live. When the world tells you to wait outside, you can. You can be polite. You can be patient. Or you can walk in, build the table, and write the minutes. She smiled, just a little, at the simplest version of it all. Begin. When the world tells you to wait outside, don't. Walk in, claim your space, and remind them who built the room. What would you do if you were Naomi Brooks? Would you have stayed silent or stood your ground? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be seen.